So where was I? Yes. So the Japanese decided, as in, we can't have this happen again. So they went on this modernization. They went and learned about the enemy, then came back and said, "Oh, okay, we need to position ourselves in terms of development and technology and all those things, so that we are able to fight back and resist." Okay, that's what the Japanese did. Eventually, even when they were decimated on the 6th and the 9th of August in 1945 with the Hiroshima and Nagasaki incident. You must go and do your own research on that one. You should know about it. The Hiroshima and Nagasaki incident is a very famous incident where the Americans dropped it was a hydrogen bomb, yeah. But the destruction that they unleashed on that day, they like to sing about as if it was something that was good. As you know, Americans, they term their behavior to be hawkish when in actual fact it's just genocidal maniacs. So those maniacs who did those things, dropped those two bombs and obliterated entire communities, specifically civilians that had nothing to do with what's going on in it. All because Japan went into China. If you remember, I spoke about this last week. Japan went into China and tried to take some land there because they felt that because of their population crisis, they need to have more land. It was not the first time, by the way, that the Japanese and the Chinese were fighting. It had happened before. So we go into looking at the China question, the Manchurian question, where what did the Chinese do after being invaded? What did they do about it? Because the Chinese, it's much more crazy, because what happens is Britain goes into China, establishing trade and bringing Christianity. Come to China there, again, China was an empire at the time. They had an emperor, was still a young man at the time. Okay, no problem. This is happening around the 1800s again. The British were very busy around the 1800s, very, very busy. So they go in there, and what are they trading with the Chinese? Opium. You go there, you check for yourself, and try and read up on the opium wars, or look for someone who's talking about the opium wars in detail. There should be someone who speaks about that on YouTube. I mean, people talk about a lot of very deep subjects. So Britain goes there to go and sell the Chinese drugs. Okay, they get away with it for some time, and up until the time where the Chinese were like, "No, man, but this thing is devastating us, because people who are supposed to be farming are not farming, people who are supposed to be selling are not selling. We are in dire straits." Because the Chinese government empire at the time, they had a properly well-machined, well-oiled machine at the time of running their country. They had figured out how to manage an empire, something that even the Romans had difficulty doing. So they were in a position where they were managing themselves very well, without the need of going out to invade countries. The foundation of China by itself, also, you must remember, it was a conquest kind of thing. A bunch of people came in and tried to unite China up to a very late attempt, because I think even the Mongolians did not succeed in uniting the entire area of China into one nation. But that's another story. So British invade, they want to sell drugs to the Chinese. The Chinese must eat our drugs. When the emperor says, "No, Yazin, we need to do something about this thing, no more drugs." Oh, the British were like, "Oh, sure. Is that what you want to do?" they bought gun. They brought their guns. So they brought warships into China, and they started fighting. And that's how they managed to take the island of Hong Kong. That's why Hong Kong today still remains a British, because that's where they fortified themselves, and they were fighting with China. So these wars went on from the 1839 to 1860. After which, China could barely recover. So it all culminated to a point where there was now a red revolution because the Britishers had done so much damage to the Chinese empire, and just corruption and maladministration was rampant. So enter Mao Zedong and his Red Revolution, who he decimated entire populations of Chinese people. It was just a horrible thing of communist domination, but they ended up somewhere. Granted, what Mao and his red generals decided to do was, okay, since we have been targeted in this way, how do we make sure that this thing never happens ever again? So again, you see that China is doing. I think the person who has done the most in that regard was the guy before the current guy, Bani, the current Chinese president. What's his name? I'm why am I forgetting this guy today? Anyway, Xi Jinping. The guy before Xi Jinping did quite more, because I think the system that he used was what the Japanese did. You see China opening up to the world, but not really opening up, but literally inviting itself to overseas countries, going to learn, allowing the Americans to come and establish industries to get cheap labor while they steal their secrets. Because that's another thing that is not spoken. There's no copyright issues. There's no copyright law in China. They can just steal Apple's ideas and use them on their own phones, which is what they've done successfully over time. That's why they've industrialized so much. And Jinping has made sure that his goal is to make sure that China has an army that nobody wants to mess with. Literally, China, you can't mess with China. No one's gonna go to China and do shit. It's not gonna happen. This is what the Chinese have done through all the invasion and the wars and the opium things they had to go through because of foreign powers, foreign interest. They have gone to a point where it's like, as in, we've gone through this, ne? Okay, it must never happen again. Yeah, they didn't have long-winded speeches and whatnot. They went and built factories, built industries, built universities, children sharing knowledge, teaching them things that go into industrialization. They built infrastructure. They did everything. That means getting ahead of their enemies. It's not that the Chinese want to be a global leader or anything. It's not a problem. It's not the main issue. The issue is Chinese understand that if they don't level up practically, in practical terms, if they don't level up, then what happened in the 1800s and the 1940s can still happen. So they told themselves, never again. And you think you are done. You go to India. And the Indians only got their independence in 1947. The British Empire had them by the scrotums for years. For more than 100 years, they were under British occupation, and they fought to such a point that, you know, they even had two different ways of approaching the problem. The one side of India was more interested in a violent movement, And then there was another side that was more involved in the pacifist movements. And the pacifist movements are always going to be famous because the West likes to, that they don't like to talk about how they were being beaten militarily and whatnot, all those things. So that's why you find that Mahatma Gandhi are the bastions of Indian independence, when really in practicality they didn't do nothing. They were busy talking. The people who were pushing violent civil disorder movements in India are the ones who brought it into independence. So yes, so they achieved their independence in 1947. And what did they do? They industrialized. And in fact, even before 1947, they had already started, because we are told the Mittal family had started doing industry just a bit before that, 1942. There, you start seeing the Mittal family setting up shop in India. The Mahindra family as well. They get really the Tata family. In 1868, they started being industrial. You go look it up. It's there. Some of you are driving Tata cars and Mahindras today. You don't understand the history. You're driving Toyotas. You're driving Nissans. You don't know the history. You don't know why Japan had to set up Toyota, the biggest automobile company in the entire planet. They had to build those systems up to make sure that they don't fall victim. They come from a horrible place they don't want to go back into. They recognized just how horrible being invaded by other nations was. So they live it up. Udeng, yes, thank you for reminding me, Hlachwa. Udeng, Deng, quite very, very much busy with the industrialization of China. Yeah. So it's been a very long-term project they've been involved in. They don't give speeches. They just did. Now, we come to Africa. Okay, we come to African countries. Let's look at the African countries. And having suffered invasion, we are just going to ignore the Mediterranean countries there at the north, because what is left there, even though those places were invaded, the problem is when they invaded them, they obliterated the African populations. So you have a bunch of Arabs there who think they are Africans, but they know that they're not. They are just Persians. Or from Libya, Tunisia, Morocco, Egypt. I'm not sure if did I miss anyone? I think also in Mauritania as well. Those countries there at the north, there's no Africans there. You can't call those places. They also try to get involved in the politics of Europe, because they know they're not Africans, they're Persians. They were brought there by the Persian empires. Some of them it was due to the caliphs, some it was the Roman invasions, some it was the Greek invasions. So technically, as I'm Africans, but they know they're not. But I'm shooting team. At least one of them, Muammar Gaddafi, was interested in the idea of uniting Africa and building a state of Africa. Brilliant idea. And where is he? Dead. Finished. His country decimated, destroyed. Whatever he did for them, it's all in rubble now. The French have taken over there. All the oil belongs to the Total now, Total Energies, which is a French company. But again, Libya is a study in disaster. But anyway, it basically tells you how these invading powers deal with these people who are Arabs. It's very unique to them. But let's look to this African, a very unique issue as well. It's very unique with African. These Africans, our brothers and sisters, hey, Buffett, into it, So people come in, invade us, kidnap our people, torture them, murder them, decimate them, genocide. Uh, the human trafficking on the scale that has never been seen. I don't think it will ever be seen again. They talk about the human trafficking today as a bigger problem. Human trafficking they did in Africa, transatlantic slave, the Arab Mediterranean slave trade, millions of people who were stolen. That's not even the atrocities that were being visited on Africans. You can spend 65 years explaining unimaginable things that happened here. Unimaginable things happened here. But what did Africans do about it? What did we do? After we were invaded, what did we do about it? I have a very quick answer because honestly speaking, we haven't done shit. Excuse my language. We haven't done nothing. And I think basically one of the biggest issues we have is we fail to understand reality in a logical sense. We are often too poetic about life. We think flowery and oratory gymnastics are going to get things done. Yo, what a shame. But yes, Africans have done nothing since being invaded, and it stands to reason that they can still be invaded again and still be kidnapped again. No problem. They have no defense against that. That's why we find that we can still be told by the same people who came in here to invade us what to do. They tell us what to do. They tell our governments what to do, how to live. Your entire healthcare system has to be endorsed by US aid. PEPFAR, all of them. Belinda and Melinda Gates Foundation, who have nothing to do with healthcare, but they are deep in there. So Africa exists as a Nkosi is Aram. What are they doing now? And they call it investing in the development of Africa. Africa is being left behind. That's the definition. So the question is, what have Africans done after being invaded? And we fail to understand reality. That's our biggest issue. We think that this planet operates on rhetoric alone. We want to do gymnastics with the words. Take, for example, I'm going to just do one example, very easy, simple thing. When everybody else was fighting for independence meaning inner dependence, depending on the self. Inner. If it's a nation, then it's a nation that is depending on its own self, on its own organs, on its own people, on its own communities. Independence. What did the Africans think that was that? What did the Africans think that word meant? They thought it meant freedom. Freedom. Hey, boo. If you think I'm lying, you have a freedom charter, Nin. The ANC was not fighting for independence, it was fighting for freedom. It stands to reason then that Africans have done nothing to become independent. And it's not just South Africa. The entire African continent was fighting for freedom. Even in the diaspora there, in the cotton fields, they were fighting for independence. They were fighting for freedom. Everybody fights to be independent. Africans fight for freedom. Two different things. Two different things. And these things, this thing of freedom has been directing your own narrative. Because you see, once you don't have the proper narrative for the world, you can never get anywhere. I don't have to produce anything. You live in it. Your own community. Le emakhaya ezilalini la ubashiye khona uhleli lapha eGoli. Bahlala in spaces where they are not independent. There is no independence. We have to buy impuphu from other people. That's not independence. Like the basic bare minimum things. We depend on other people for them. Mele kuphume imali from our own community iye ngaphandle to sustain. Ayikwazi ukuhlala la. You know, people talk about the Chinese spider web, what is, but like it's some magical thing that the Chinese have discovered. Nonsense. The Chinese went for independence. That's why their money is able to circulate in China 55,000 times before iphumelele ngaphandle. They understood what being independent means. I need to buy African. If I'm an African, I need to buy African. There is no Chinese that's going to set up shop in an African neighborhood and be supported. That's what the Chinese understood. And it's not just the Chinese. Everyone does it. Everyone does it. It's a simple thing. It's not complicated. It doesn't need oration, but we are talking about it because your spirituality does not align with the reality of the world. That's why you are here. That's why you can't get over freedom versus independence. Yes, I told you Lego. And then they come and speak big words there, talking. Kulma 2 days ends a speech. I exist in the political space. I know exactly what I'm talking about. The game is to orate. That's all. They just want it's a game of oration, gymnastics. Everything in the politics of Africans is just debate. Even things that require practical solutions, debate. They want to orate. And Africans love oration. So if someone is orating, we get people come there orating about communism and whatnot, and autoflusias and all these big words. You get bamboozled. And you get entranced now. We are in awe. Yay, are you a politician? Meanwhile, the niggas are not doing nothing. Excuse my language. They're not doing nothing. They are not building anything. You get excited by seeing people building a mall. Ama-mall azobengena iy'tolo zamabhunu namangisi namandiya namashaya. Houses nemall emsinga. You get excited. As if that's bringing prosperity into MC. You never look at the world in the way that you're supposed to look at it. That's why other children beat you. You're sitting there, you are imagining these glorious things that are not existing. You are waiting for someone to do something, and that's where the spirituality they have given you comes in. You go and be a Christian in China today. You go. You go to Japan. Korea. I'm calling North Korea. Saudi Arabia laphana where the Muslims are trying to do something now as well. You go there. Uyokwenza le spirituality salabantu abantu sasona ubone ukuthi uzofika. They rejected those things. And you know what? Because you have been taught ukuthi ke uGod wara. Daba. They rejected Jesus laphana. You don't see them dying out. The universe has not rejected them. Azange isho ukuthi hayi ngoba ama-China awamfuni Jesus. Hey, now I'm a punishment of 16 million. They ignored that thing baqhubeka nento yabo, and they started going back to the ancient things that they forgot. Because remember, if you remember, lento yama Shaolin temples and all those things had already literally been left and forgotten because of Mao's revolution. They started bringing all of that back. Ngesikhathi so